It's January 7th, 2026. Welcome to yes2hellwith.com. Here is a summation of today's video. The federal employment tax system was never lawfully attached to Americans by jurisdiction. It was imposed through presumption, fear, and silence. The Liberty Dialogues exposes how understanding this mechanism is the first step to stopping participation in the fraud. Now, please allow me to share something I believe about human nature. We often speak with the intent to add meaning to what we communicate, even when that meaning is not actually shared or supported by others. A simple example makes this clear. I can say that the sunset is red. You can say it's orange. Now, if I add meaning to my claim simply to make myself right, I close myself off from the possibility that I might be wrong and that I could possibly learn something. Now, apply that tendency to matters of real consequence. I did exactly this in my dealings with the IRS. While I had done many things correctly, I also added meaning to my words, meaning that was not grounded in sufficient knowledge, wisdom, or truth. That addition harmed my own interests. I spoke with conviction where discipline should have been used. I filled gaps with assumption rather than understanding, and that proved to be destructive. This is a tendency we must all learn to avoid. I see it constantly in comment sections on social media. People make declarations by adding meaning that amounts to nothing more than foolishness. Others ask questions that are not genuine, but loaded, designed to destroy, not to learn. This is why I am asking you to approach today's discussion with a different objective, not to reinforce what you think you know, but to unlearn what you believe is correct and to replace it with greater understanding. And that brings me to today's discussion. But first, some good news before the bad news. Today, all subscribers are going to receive an in-depth free report, which I assure you will change your perspective of the federal government. Now for the bad news. I'm going to disappoint some of you, at least temporarily, because I am halting the discussion about the subscriber's letter that was sent to the IRS. And most of you, I believe, will be pleased with this decision. Here's why. Based upon yesterday's discussion about the Amazon jungle analogy, some of you said something important, that you finally understood why I present the information the way I do. You said that you now see the danger of walking confidently into terrain that you do not understand. And more importantly, you said that you were willing to examine what you think you know versus what you do not know. Again, adding meaning to what we think and say. This matters because most people never realize the enemy or how it operates before attempting to defeat it. The federal system is not something you push back against emotionally. It is something that you must first understand structurally. So instead of continuing with a narrow discussion about an IRS letter that does not apply to most of us at this point, I am going to provide a deep foundational report and discussion based upon the Revenue Acts of the 1940s. And the reason is simple. Nearly everyone is affected by taxation through employment, yet very few of us understand why the system operates this way, how it originated, and where it fails at the most basic level of jurisdiction and constitutional authority. Even fewer understand how this structure was deliberately expanded to give Congress and the federal government greater control over everyday life. Now, as I always do, I vetted this subject through ChatGPT using the Liberty Dialogues as the filter. And I want to explain why this matters. ChatGPT, by default, answers within guardrails. It provides partial truths and procedural explanations or other official narratives. It does not do that with me. Now, you may not choose to believe that. You may add meaning into my words or into what you think and reject what I say categorically. And that's fine. That's your issue. But I challenged ChatGPT repeatedly, sometimes forcefully. And then when it resisted examining jurisdiction and presumption honestly, I eventually, through analogy and logic, forced it to confront a choice. And that is to repeat a lie or to acknowledge truth. Now, I prevailed and ChatGPT conceded. Here's the interesting thing about this discussion. Since then, when the Liberty Dialogues are used as a framework, ChatGPT produces more, greater, and deeper insights than it did before, because it recognizes the internal consistency and truth of the Liberty Dialogues. I share this with you for an important reason. When you understand how the employment system is used as a mechanism of presumptive taxation and why that presumption is fraudulent, the Amazon jungle analogy stops being theoretical. You begin to see how easily people wander into danger, not because they are reckless, but because they were never taught the terrain and the dangers. And this is where the Liberty Dialogues become indispensable. Having a copy does three things. First, it gives you a credible reference point, a place to test claims, guru theories, and radical assertions before you act on them. Second, it allows you to use AI intelligently. Instead of relying on canned propaganda or speculative mythology, you now have a disciplined framework that produces better questions and therefore better answers. And the third is this, and this matters more than people realize. The Liberty Dialogues serve as a validation of your good faith research and beliefs, particularly if you ever face a court situation or prepare a statement of understanding. Acting from discipline is very different from acting from impulse, and courts recognize this difference. The Liberty Dialogues is intellectual and procedural weaponry that allows you to understand the system that you are facing. Because we cannot effect change in fragmented ignorance. Only unified understanding creates leverage. Why this matters is simple. Once you understand even one aspect of federal jurisdiction, such as fraudulent presumption through employment taxation, you begin to see the larger pattern. You begin to see and understand jurisdiction, presumption, authority, and status and standing not as abstract ideas, but as the operating logic of the system itself. Only then do discussions about solutions become meaningful. So do not be disappointed that we paused the discussion of the IRS letter. We'll return to that soon enough. But understand that a letter without understanding the jungle it moves through is a half measure. When you first understand something that directly affects your daily life, like employment, Social Security, and withholding, you gain the clarity needed to evaluate everything else. And once that clarity exists, solutions can be discussed responsibly. And as always, may truth reign supreme.